I opened up the mailbag and it's all about trades. And hey, maybe a little bit of advice too, right now on the Friday Locked On Celtics podcast.
Be ever ready. Recognize the city of champs. Boston, baby, we do what you can't. Locked on number 18, Tatum and Brown, J-team, step back. We gon' wet that and slay teams. Of course, the Celtics, who else could it be? Screaming like KG with the Larry O.B. Corrales above average, assessing the team status. Best daily pod, no cap, salary matching. Clutch like Bird the DJ, keep John on replay. Prime time, dapping up the truth on the sideline. Rainy J's, how it started, raising banners, how we finished. Locked on Celtics pod, home of the winners. B.
Hey there, thank you for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day, Monday through Friday, making it part of your daily routine. Locked On Celtics is free, available everywhere podcasts exists, available on all platforms, including YouTube. Would love to have you watch the YouTube channel where you can see me on a casual Friday. Got my Locked On beanie on, with the hoodie, just chilling on a Friday. Every episode, in case you missed one, it's available on LockedOnCeltics.com. Today's episode is brought to you by TrueBill. TrueBill is the new app that saves you money by helping you identify and stop paying for the subscriptions you do not want or need. And they can even negotiate better deals on the ones that you want to keep. Today is a mailbag day, so I said, hey, send me some questions. You can always send me questions at any time at johncorrales.com/mailbag. So people sometimes after games send me questions. So I have a few. I can't get to all of them, and I apologize for some of them that I can't get to. I will try to answer those that I can't individually, but feel free to send them. And occasionally I will sprinkle them into just a daily, hey, there's a question that I got. I remember this one. I'm gonna fold this into some of my coverage here. But that's basically, everything has been about trades. Everything's about trades. The whole, people want to know different ways to use the tools that the Celtics have, targets, all of that stuff. So that's basically what this show is going to be, plus a little bit of advice for the youngsters out there at the very, very end. So let me start with this. Jabari Parker is now in health and safety protocols. Everybody is in health and safety protocols. It seems like around the league, they keep adding more and more and more people. And it's kind of wild right now. This has been more intense than it was last year for sure. And the NBA and Players Association announced that there's going to be new levels of testing, new levels of precautions, more mask use, all of that stuff. They're really trying to clamp down on the spread of COVID. And look, I can get into a whole big thing. I got into some of it at on the Wednesday Locked On NBA podcast. You know, I put out a tweet that said maybe it's time to pause the season, and there was a significant amount of pushback. I don't see the need. Like, there's nothing wrong with taking a week off or 2 weeks off, giving everybody a chance to let it just calm down and calm the spread a little bit. But I know not everybody agrees. That it's not even worth it for me to get into it with people. I disagree. But I disagree with a lot of things that happened since the beginning of COVID till now. I feel like we're almost, it's too far gone. And people say, well, COVID's here to stay. I mean, yeah, because we didn't eradicate it when we had the chance. And now it is here to stay. And, whatever. It's whatever. I can do a whole different thing on that separately. Jabari Parker's in health and safety protocols. So the Celtics so far, only Jabari Parker. Like I said, Josh Richardson is out. Romeo Langford didn't feel good at practice either. He is not on the injury report right now. He had COVID earlier this year. So I don't know if he has it again. That would suck if he does. That will keep him out for a while, but maybe it's just a normal a flu or something like that. So let's get into the questions. And the first question comes from Mitch, who asks, what's the story with Jabari Parker? I do not understand how he isn't being used at all when the majority of the time he can get a few buckets before he falters. Much better than Hernan Gomez, defense aside. Yeah, Hernan Gomez. And I have had somebody bust my balls on the YouTube comments saying that I advocated for Hernan Gomez. Yes, I advocated for Hernan Gomez because I wanted to take a flyer. Like, I thought Hernan Gomez was a very easy guy to bring in, and it cost nothing. It cost Chris Dunn, who's not even playing. It cost Carson Edwards, who's out of the league right now. And so you got Juancho Hernan Gomez, and you say, all right, let's take a flyer on that guy. And it didn't work. Now, I thought maybe they could slide him into the starting lineup and maybe they could get some production out of him playing alongside the starters. Okay, he didn't earn that. Done. Juancho's out. Jabari Parker, similar situation to Juancho. Like, they brought him in as a break glass in case of emergency guy. And if all else fails, you can throw Jabari Parker out there to maybe get you a couple of buckets. Sure. But you're giving up a lot. You are giving up a lot. And under normal circumstances, when everybody's playing great, right? When you wouldn't throw him into the Milwaukee game in the middle of everybody playing great and moving the ball and playing great defense, and then you throw Jabari Parker in there, that's like a big old wrench in the clockwork. So no, Jabari is still Jabari Parker. He can get you a few buckets, and he'll go out there and play 3 or 4 minutes and maybe get you 6-8 points. And then that's it. That's it. And you got to hope you can bottle that up and just carry it to, maybe you can carry it into the next half, but that's it. Generally speaking, that's it. So if the Celtics are desperate, you try it. But when they're not desperate, you don't bother. It's not worth it. So that's the story with Jabari Parker. He is break glass in case of emergency, desperation type of guy. If you're not desperate, you don't use him. Nathan C asks, is it possible to trade a TPE for the player that generated the TPE? The Knicks might be willing to unload Fournier for our Fournier TPE and maybe even sweeten it with another player or pick. Change of scenery, shooting, playmaking could do the C's good. So no, with an asterisk, no, the Celtics cannot go directly to the Knicks and say, we would like to get Fournier back with the TPE that we created. You cannot reacquire a player that you traded away in that same season or in that offseason prior until that next season is over. The only caveat there is if the Knicks were to waive him, buy him out for some reason, or trade him to a new team, and that team buys him out, the Celtics can be the next team after that. They can't be the first team that reacquires him. But once he goes to a new team and that new team cuts him, then the Celtics can get him back. So technically they could, but realistically, no. You cannot go back and reacquire anybody that you've traded away. There's generally a 1-year moratorium. So no, that the answer is no. Evan Fournier is gone, and you should be happy that he's gone because the way he's playing right now, considering what he was making, you could have dealt with some of the ups and downs if he was making less. But if this was the guy that was on the Celtics, my God, I don't even want to know what people would be saying right now. So forget Evan Fournier. Just put him out of your minds. Last question of this segment. Angelo says, say this season is tomorrow. What's the first move the Celtics should be made to make the Celtics contenders for the 22-23 season? So that's obviously a very broad, general question. Appreciate the kind words there, Angelo, that were in addition to that. The first thing that they should do, I'll put it this way. The Celtics should be pursuing, and my friend Matt Moore at the Action Network reported that the Celtics are actively trying to scour the market to see if there's a third star available. So the Celtics, the first thing that they need to do is clear enough space on the roster to facilitate that. So is that a Schroeder? Clear that guy out. If we're talking about off season, then I think just figuring out if there's a third guy for to pair with Tatum and Brown. I say that assuming that there's a progression with Jason Tatum and a progression with Jaylen Brown. And I've said multiple times in multiple places, this season is about making sure that Tatum can be a first team all NBA level player and that Jaylen can be also an all NBA level player. You have an MVP candidate and an all NBA candidate. And hey, if you want to flip those two guys, as long as one of them is an MVP candidate, that's fine. If that's the case, then you're going out and you're figuring out, okay, who's the third star? And I always compare it to Milwaukee, the Drew Holiday. Who's your Drew Holiday? That's what I want to know. Is it Sabonis? Is it Brogdon? Is it somebody else? Is it somebody from the Kings? Is it somebody from the Spurs? Is it somebody from somebody else? Like that's the move. That's the move. Next offseason is about making that third player move. And the only question is, are they going all in on a third, like that star that Tatum and Brown will support, or a third star level player that will support Tatum and Brown? That's the question. Are those two guys supporting the top guy, or are they going to be supported by the third guy that they get? That's the question. And that's the move for the offseason. I'll talk about that. I'll talk about more questions here. I'll take more questions about Dennis Schröder, specifically about Dennis Schröder coming up. A couple of questions about Schroeder when I return. First, I've got to talk to you about TrueBill. You know that when you sign up for a subscription, you're always cruising the internet. You see something, you're like, oh, this will be interesting. Yeah, I'll try it for 14 days. Yeah, I'll try it for 7 days. No problem. You put in your credit card information, you try it. You're like, okay. And then you forget about it. And if you don't check your credit card statement, then you're going to get a big surprise in a couple of when you go to pay your bill. So don't let those greedy corporations take advantage of you. Get TrueBill, the new app that helps you identify and stop paying for subscriptions that you do not need or want, or the ones you simply forgot about. People generally save about $720 a year with TrueBill because companies make subscriptions hard to cancel. TrueBill simplifies the whole thing. You link your accounts, they will cancel the ones you don't want in one tap. And with TrueBill Concierge, they will cancel your unwanted subscriptions on their own so you do not have to. All right. I have been burned by subscription renewals that I didn't want, and I've had to spend time that I didn't have on the phone to get my money back. TrueBill has over 2 million users, and they have helped them save over $100 million. Don't fall for subscription scams. Start canceling today at TrueBill.com/LockedOnNBA. Go right now. TrueBill.com/LockedOnNBA. It can save you thousands a year. TrueBill.com/LockedOnNBA. Hey, thank you for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Make your second listen one of these all other Locked On NBA podcasts. Locked On Warriors is a great new podcast with new hosts. Check them out. Locked On Knicks is a great show. Locked On Sixers has a new host, Serena Winters. She's awesome. So all of the upcoming opponents, they're going to have things to say about the Celtics. Check out one of these Locked On podcasts for the other teams in the league or hear the other side. They're all available everywhere podcasts exist. They're all eventually going to be on YouTube. So if they're not, they will be soon. Let's get back to the mailbag. Molly would like to know, is there any chance Dennis resigns with us after the season? I feel like he's done so well for the most part, helps our team offense. Will he accept the role long-term as sixth man? So Molly, I don't think there's a chance. Well, there is a chance. There is a chance. So let's start with that. The chance, what would make Schroeder re-sign with Boston? First of all, Boston will have to want him. And, I'm not 100% sure that they would want him back. But at the right price with his abilities, okay, fine. Let's assume that they want him back. What can they offer him? Not much. The most they can offer him is the full mid-level exception. They don't have bird rights they have a thing called non-bird rights. The first year player gets non-bird rights, which gets you a little bit more of a raise, but not really a ton. It's a tiny bit more. They have their full mid-level exception available. If they give him anything more than the taxpayer mid-level next year, they will be hard capped. And considering what Smart and Jalen and Jason and Rob make, if you keep Al Horford, like you can't be hard capped. It's just not possible. So they're not going to do that. So there's an outside chance that the market dries up and he says, you know what, I'm out of here. And he goes and plays the market and the same thing happens again, that the Celtics say, well, we're not giving you any more than the taxpayer mid-level. And he says, okay, deuces, and goes out and no other team wants him. And he says, okay, you know what? Maybe I will take that taxpayer mid-level again for one more season, and goes back out and tries it again. Meanwhile, the Celtics re-sign him. They get early bird rights next season, which is another form of bird rights, but not the full bird rights. And you can play that game again with a little bit more of a raise and a little bit different structure for the contract. And in that next year, if he goes out and there's nothing there again, you sign him for another year. Now you've got full bird rights and we'll play that game year to year to year. So the bottom line is it's possible. And you scan the league and you say, I don't know, maybe there isn't a market for Schroeder. Like we think that he's been good in spots, and he has, and I'm thinking a little bit more down on Schroeder. I think he's a sixth man that shouldn't play with Marcus Smart and has a more limited role. If he thinks he's more than that, and he tries to get more than that, and if he can get more than that somewhere, then great. Then maybe he can. Maybe he can get a 2-year deal from a team that has a little bit of cap space and says, hey, you know what? We want your ability to driving it to the rim, and more power to you. But it's a very limited window, small window for Schroeder, which is why I say I think that they should just trade him, because he's probably not coming back next year anyway. And so get something. He was found money, so get something for him, right? Why not? And that brings me to the question from King, who says, what is the minimum that the Celtics should expect back for trading Schroeder prior to the trade deadline this season? I think, well, the minimum would be like a second round pick. But if you're going to move Schroeder, you have to get at least a second round pick. And I have a lot of pushback from people in the comments and YouTube that are saying, no way, you got to get a first round pick, or you got to get a player. You got to get something of some value for him. And it just doesn't work that way. Doesn't work that way. Schroeder is not going to command that. Even if you think, well, his play is up here, you should get a player in a return that's up here. If it is this high, if you are high on Schroeder and you're right and I'm wrong, fine. But if that's the case, then somebody's going to give him money, and maybe the team trading for him isn't going to be able to re-sign him. So you're renting the guy, and that's going to be that's going to depress what you give up. You're not going to give up much for a rental. It's going to be a second or 2 seconds. I've been talking about 2 seconds, or that heavily protected first, where Brad Stevens can say, hey, I got a first for Dennis Schroeder, when it's not really a first. That's basically where you go. That's I think where I land. A second or 2 seconds. 2 seconds would be great. And I think 2 seconds, second round picks are valuable. People say they're disposable, and they are in some senses, but they do also hold value, because you don't know when one of them can become BJ Boston. You don't know when one of them can become Draymond Green. You don't know when one of them can just be attached to a contract that you need to get rid of. So they are valuable, but you're not going to get more than a second round pick or two for Dennis Schroeder, unless you're aggregating him with other players to get somebody back. And he can be an expiring contract that a team that picks him up says, yeah, well, we're going to get rid of that $5+ million anyway. Here's your $3 million player, and we're going to save more money. That's a possibility too. Somebody like a Bryn Forbes that, in San Antonio, that was brought up by my friends Tom Westerholm and Chris Grenham on the Genotime podcast. That would be a way to, if they wanted to save more money, say, hey, we'll take Schroeder when Schroeder goes rather than letting Bryn Forbes go. We'll save a little bit more money, open up more space or whatever. That's a way to do it. So that's how you have to think of Schroeder. No matter how good you think he is, even if you think he's the best player on the team, sorry, the market is not huge for him in a trade. Even if a team out west says, hey, he's the missing piece, maybe you can get a couple of second-round picks. Maybe you can play with the protections on a first, but you're not going to get a whole lot. Okay? It's just, you have to prepare yourself. Michael says, I was wondering what your thoughts are on Sabonis on the trade block. I love his game. Would love to see him playing in green. What are one or two realistic trade packages you think Brad might be willing to put together to get him playing alongside the Jays? So Sabonis makes 18 million, 17, 18 million. So what do you get? What do you get for that? You can give up. Are you giving up Robert Williams? If you're not sold on Robert Williams, if you think that Rob is regressing, then maybe you give up on Robert Williams and you say, we don't need the lob threat. We need somebody who's a little bit more than that. And so Sabonis makes some sense there. His 3-point percentage is not great, but he can still step back there and maybe in the right situation with the right opportunities, he can hit a higher percentage. So you're kind of getting an upgraded Daniel Tice in that way. Sabonis is better than Tice, obviously, but we always consider Tice a stretch big, but his 3-point shooting percentage was not great. So I think we're looking at that type of player. You'd have to give up. Like, I wouldn't give up Marcus Smart to make that happen, because to me, that's not worth it. What you're giving up and getting back, it's not worth it. If Indiana is looking to save some money, you could easily give up some players and say, hey, you can get out of his contract earlier. You can get a Richardson, and you can say at the deadline, hey, Richardson and Schroeder, and like, we'll give you expiring contracts. We'll give you space to play with, and you throw a pick in there, nothing great, but you throw a pick in there to make that more palatable. That's the type of play I would make for Sabonis. I'm not giving up. Like, you want to give up one of the young guys? Is it Romeo? Like, I don't know. This is where I'm out of whack with the offer. Like, I look at Romeo and like, I see what he can become. But okay, if Indiana wants to take the Indiana kid back and you say, okay, Romeo is the player, the young player that you're going to get, plus the expiring contracts, fine. I'll do that. And then you can figure out how that plays out. But I'm not going too much more than that. I'm really not. All right, let's wrap this up. We're going to come back and talk a little bit more about some non-trade stuff, including the lack of shooting, Robert Williams' lack of offensive moves, and some advice for the youngsters. That's coming up after I tell you about Built Bar, which you all know is the best tasting protein bar on the market. Get yourself a Built Bar. Go to built.com. Use the promo code LOCKED15. You're going to get 15% off your next order. Look, this is the December 17th show. You're going to have to do rush shipping if you want to put it, but you can do it and get it in time. Depending on where you are, maybe you don't have to get the rush shipping, but these are great stocking stuffers. Get them, stick them in the stockings. They're going to be fantastic because they're low in calories, low sugar, low net carbs, low fat, high in protein. This is better than any sort of candy bar that you're going to throw in there. There are tons of flavors for any type of desire, any type of flavor profile that anybody loves. They're going to give you the extra fuel if you want to use it for yourself. Get that last minute shopping done. If you haven't eaten in a while and you're fighting through the mall or fighting through whatever, sitting in traffic, that Built Bar is going to get you from hangry to more comfortable. So get that Built Bar right now. Use that promo code LOCK15, 15% off your next order at built.com. BetOnline has you covered for all the props and odds and lines more than ever before, especially now as football season winds down. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the sports action this season. Head on over. They've got a new updated desktop and mobile site. Get that promo code locked on for a 50% welcome bonus, 50% extra on top of whatever you deposit on your first deposit. So use that promo code locked on. They've got all the sports that you want to bet on. They've got your favorite Vegas casino games. So take advantage of all the offers right now at BetOnline, the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. Please gamble responsibly. Hey, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast. Thank you for making it your first listen every day. Why not make your second listen Locked On Bets with Lee Sterling, your boy Q. They're going to help you sift through the craziness of betting, and they're going to give you some great advice on the Locked On Bets podcast. So check them out wherever podcasts exist. Hey, if you're looking for a last minute gift, my book, the Boston Celtics all-time all-stars, right here on YouTube. This book is the 12 players. I formatted it as the 2 players at each position. So that's 10 plus 2 wild cards, 2 coaches. This is the 75th anniversary team that's going to be announced with the Boston Celtics. So this is a very appropriate book for the 75th anniversary. Buy it right now at johncorrales.com. You can see it on the right away on johncorrales.com. Buy it now because it's going to take about 3 or 5 days to get to you. Like I said, it's the 17th. So you've got like a day or two to get that last minute shipping in. $30 on johncorrales.com for a signed copy. $30 for a signed copy at johncorrales.com. Pick one up now for a last minute gift for the Celtics fan in your life. They're going to love it. Check it out. All right. Last questions here as we wrap up the show. Let's get to, I got past my questions. I don't know what I just did, but the first question here is about Robert Williams and his lack of offensive moves. And the question is from Mike C. How urgent is Rob's lack of offensive moves? Have you asked the coaching staff if they're working with him, working with anything on him? So, no, I haven't asked that question. I don't think there's a real urgency here with the lack of moves that he has. He's not an offensive, big contributor offensively as far as dumping it into the post and watching him make some post moves. I think he's going to be obviously rolling and getting to the rim, catching lobs. I think he's the next step for him. Obviously, he's going to be putting back offensive rebounds. That's all he needs to be. And I don't think there's a real urgency to make him more than that. He's trying to add a mid-range jumper. Okay, let's work on that. I don't think he needs to extend out to 3. The whole purpose of Rob is that vertical spacing, which means that when you run a pick and roll with Robert Williams and he rolls down that lane, everybody converges and it opens up that perimeter. That's what vertical spacing is. As I knock down my book here, he is on the floor to get those lobs when everybody's too spread out offensively and guarding the corners. Then you have Robert Williams coming down the lane and getting easy lobs. So then the next time they run a pick and roll and he's coming down the lane, everybody sucks in. And even if you get it to him in the middle of the lane, he does a great job of turning and whipping it out to the corner. Why does my book keep on falling now? I've knocked it over and now it doesn't want to stay up. So that's the thing with Rob's offensive moves. I don't think there's any urgency to his lack of moves. You want to get him in with Akeem Olajuwon and start working on some offense. That's great. But really, honestly, for Rob, he's working with Tatum and Brown and shooters. Eventually, there will be better shooters. And Marcus Smart is going to be driving down the lane. Like, you need that guy that creates what he does. So I don't think it's very urgent at all. Nathan, nearly all the Celtics issues stem from a lack of shooting? Double bigs puts Al back into his Philly role, which went bad. Marcus is Marcus. Time Lord can't shoot. Schroeder is streaky at best. Why not keep Schroeder as a 6th man, regardless of who's hurt? Start Grant at the 4. Move Horford to the bench. Not only will the spacing help Tatum, but actually making some of the threes will help win games. I agree. Now, this question came in, I think, a while ago. So This is a concept that I've been talking about a lot here on the Locked On Celtics podcast. I agree. I think Grant Williams has moved his way into that starting lineup. I think he's getting that other shooter. And the best part about Grant in the starting lineup is you start smart and you run those lobs, those pick and rolls, the hard dives with Rob. And if you have to kick it out to the corner, Grant is there and has been shooting extraordinarily well from the corner. Who are you going to help off of? You're going to help off of Grant in that situation. With Tatum, with Brown, with Smart, with Rob, you're running those pick and rolls and you're running plays to get Tatum and Brown coming up off of pin downs and stuff like that. Rob's going to operate in that corner. I'd rather have that. And I think he's good enough defensively where that works. You pair Horford with Schroeder. They have a great chemistry. Do that. I love it. I like that pairing. I think Nathan is kind of on point here. If the Celtics had better shooting, some of these losses become wins. Some of the early deficits become more even, and the Celtics have a chance to kind of play more evenly throughout the game. But we knew coming in that shooting was going to be an issue. Shooting is a problem. The Celtics definitely need more shooting. So if they can work on that or play more guys, certainly get Nesmith, get Pritchard out there. One of the reasons why I'm pushing so hard for a Schroeder trade, a little bit more Pritchard. Why not put Pritchard out there more often and get him into a situation where his shooting needs to be respected, get him more comfortable, more confident. So shooting would certainly help. Finally, last question of the podcast here comes from David, who asks, I'm looking into writing about the Celtics in my free time. I'm looking for any advice you might have. I'm a 22-year-old from southeastern Massachusetts whose biggest dream is to cover sports in any capacity. When I'm older, I love all sports, but basketball and the Celtics are by far my favorite. Okay, so it goes on. Here's my quick podcast level advice is do not, first and foremost, do not lionize the Celtics as your most ideal job, because what's going to end up happening is you're going to get a job at an outlet or you're going to get a job covering the seas, and it might not go how you want. It might not make you the money that you think it was going to make. It's going to go sour. And if you put too much emphasis on, I want to cover the Celtics, I need to cover the Celtics, then you put yourself at risk. I'm not saying don't pursue it. Look, I grew up a Celtics fan. I grew up in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. I watched basketball. I loved all Boston sports. Now I cover the Boston Celtics. And so I did it in a way, but I'm also kind of like no longer a fan. Like I don't cover the team as a fan. If the Celtics lose, I'm not sitting there going like, oh my God, they lost. What? No, my job is to analyze why they lost and be prepared for that. Be prepared for your fandom to have to subside. It doesn't always have to go that way. Maybe you work for a fan blog or a fan site and you get to be more of a fan. Or like, look, Locked On Celtics can be whatever I make it to be. And yeah, I have this John Havlicek jersey over here. I've had it forever. And so it's part of the decoration. And you can start a podcast and be a super fan and be super, super into it. And it could take off and you could make a ton of money and that would be great. But just prepare yourself for this other thing that your fandom has to be set aside. Be prepared for your fandom to be set aside, because whether the Celtics win or lose, it's not going to bring happiness or joy to my life. I am here to analyze. And while I'm on the podcast, convey a mood. So when they lose, I do convey a mood of anger or frustration or stuff like that. I do have to like match the energy that's out there. But at the same time, it doesn't affect my life anymore. I'm not sitting there actively rooting for wins and losses. Now, obviously, I would like more wins because it helps me. The better they are, the more people watch the show, and the better I think things go as far as my traffic and all of that. But be prepared for, you have to put that stuff aside. The other thing I tell everybody is you have to be prepared for, like, you're going to take a job and it's going to suck. Be prepared to leave. Be prepared to bounce around and always advocate for yourself. because sometimes you're going to be in a position where there's money to be made and you're going to have to fight for it. And somebody's going to say, well, I'm not going to give you that money. You're going to be like, all right, well, if you're not going to give me that money, I got to bounce. And you got to be willing to do that sometimes and bet on yourself and be prepared for that. So I'll answer this a little bit more in depth, but look, you're in a great place. The internet exists, and anybody who's watching or listening, you can do what I do because the internet exists, and you might be better than I am. There's plenty of people out there who are better than I am, and there's plenty of people who aren't doing this yet that are better than I am. So there's a spot at the table for a lot of people, and eventually I'm probably going to go away. Like eventually there's going to be a new crop. It's just like the sport that we cover. Eventually I'm going to be just outdated and someone else is going to come in and my numbers are going to go and it's going to be time for me to give it up. I know that that's going to happen. And so I got to deal with that when that happens. Until then, here I am. But anybody can do this. Anybody can come up here and have the energy and the knowledge, just put in the work, put in the effort. And most importantly, I always tell everybody this: why did I get here now with this Locked On thing and being a part of this Locked On podcast network and having been here from the beginning and the podcast is doing great? Why? I always tell people I was too stupid to quit. That's it. I was too stupid to quit, too stupid to stop what I was doing. I just kept on doing it, even when it looked like I shouldn't be doing it, even when it came to a point where, most people say, you know what? Didn't work out. I wouldn't accept that. I kept on doing it. I was too stupid to quit. And then it worked out for me. Eventually, maybe I would have smartened up, but luckily things broke my way. And here I am. And I'm here for you Monday through Friday. So if you like the show, if you enjoy it, check it out Monday through Friday. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. It's available everywhere podcasts exist and on YouTube. Watch the show on YouTube. Casual Friday for me on YouTube, chilling out, just enjoying myself here on a Friday talking basketball with you. Hope you enjoyed it. If you are a regular listener, if you are a regular subscriber, I would like you to share the podcast. Christmas is coming around for people. Holidays are here. Gatherings are happening. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everybody that they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network.